Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, folks. Michael Zuber, one rental at a time. And as promised in the daily financial news, we have the one and only Mr. Brian Lebo from Las Vegas. How you doing, buddy?
I'm great. Welcome everyone. Thanks so much for watching.
So this is gonna be an interesting video because you made a very bold and interesting call about a month ago. You basically indicated over the next 2 months, either October or November, that Las Vegas, Nevada was going to have the worst transaction month ever. We're talking worse than
Yep.
January,
Yep.
worse than the pandemic. And I got to ask, how'd you do?
Yep. So it was actually the first week of September. So it was a little over 2 months ago. And for those of you that watch my videos, you know that I said in the beginning of September that the way sales were trending, I wouldn't be surprised if in the next 2 months we had the single worst month for sales basically ever. I've been tracking since 2012, so I have every single month. And there was, normally January is your terrible month, right? That's all the sales that went into escrow during, Thanksgiving, Christmas season. So it's pretty obvious that January is going to be your worst month of the year, virtually every single year. So we had 2 months in January that were pretty deplorable. And then, of course, the elephant in the room is May 2020, right in the middle of the pandemic, which, come on. We would expect that to be the worst month ever in the history of sales universally, right? That's pretty obvious. Well, I said, the way sales were going, we're going to be worse than the pandemic. And sure enough, last month's sales were 23 sales below pandemic era sales. So that's pretty profound right there.
I mean, I just want to put that in context. Like, how many did you do last year in October?
I believe it was around 2,900 here. I've got the exact numbers. Give me 1 second. So
Yeah.
if you look at, let's see, 1510. So, yep, it was 2,932. So, I mean, year over year, it was a 48.5% reduction in sales. Pretty, pretty large to say the very least, right?
Yeah, that's so again, I mean, I just have to take that in for a minute. That's roughly speaking a 50% crash in transactions.
Yeah. I mean, there's no spin, there's no way around it. Yeah, I mean, but to a degree, I mean, we had been consistently trending that way. I mean, if you look at the previous months, if you look at the previous month before that, down 41.6%, then down 42.2%, then down 40.6%. So, yeah, it's more dramatic, but nonetheless, yeah. And I'm guessing that this month that we're in currently is going to be even worse than last
Oh,
month. And
that's
if
what I
you,
was gonna ask.
yeah, I
Oh,
mean, if you look at a little bit odd. Normally your November sales are going to be below, but last November we sold 3,093 homes.
oh, so
So
you were up. Okay.
we were actually up last November, which historically doesn't normally happen. And then the same thing, we sold 2,977 homes in December of last year. So, I mean, those were pretty stellar sales months. So obviously, overachieving for November and December of last year. And then where we're at now, those numbers are going to be absolutely polarizing. I shudder to think what December and January is going to look like. Um, I'm guessing we're going to be like 1,100 for December.
Oh.
I mean, think about it. I mean, if we're at 1,500 right now, I mean, does anyone think that things are going to get better over the next 2 months? I don't think so. So, yeah, I think it's going to be a bloodbath. Bloodbath.
So again, there's always two things we talk about in housing. One is transactions, which we've just. I shudder to think 1,100 because that's what 70% crash in transactions.
Yeah. I mean, we're
That's
going to be right there.
uh, uh,
Again, 2,977, let's just say 3,000.
yeah,
And if
round
we do
numbers.
1,100, yeah, I mean, that's pretty polarizing, but I'm telling you, I mean,
It's there. It's possible.
from ear to the ground level and everyone that I've talked to in the industry, I just had a signing yesterday for one of my flips that well, let's not depress myself here about the money I'm losing on that flip. But I was talking to a manager of a big title company, and he was just telling me that they were laying off people. They just had to lay off an employee who had been with the company for 12 years. They just that's just where it's at, and they know that it's not going to get better anytime soon. So
That's where I'm going with this, because again, I've been talking about housing. So I call the housing crash in transactions. I'm one of the only people to do that. So I called this coming, and I actually said 30 to 50%. And where I went next is there are so many people's beaks that get wet in a transaction that housing's in a depression. If you're
yeah,
down 50%, it's a depression. Stop the argument.
yeah,
But it's going to pull the economy into a recession because you lay off title. You're not doing notaries. You're not doing inspections. You're not doing this. You're not doing that. And Vegas economy will feel this. The Vegas economy will feel what's going on.
yeah. And I mean, a lot of what people aren't thinking about is think of all the ancillary um, careers and jobs that are associated with it. I mean, to
Exactly.
basic levels. I mean, think about it. The guy who has a crown molding business, the guy who has a cabinet refinishing business, countertops, everything housing related. You know, if people aren't buying homes, then they're not doing any of the remodeling or things necessary when you purchase a new home. Um, Look, I mean, there's still a few refinances occurring for people that are inundated with credit cards. I couldn't believe it, but I was at a huge seminar earlier in the week, and yeah, one of the lenders I was talking to was like, "Yeah, we're still doing some refis," and I'm like, "Who the hell is refinancing? That
Yeah.
makes no sense. It's 7.5%." And he said, "Yeah, but if your credit cards are at 20%, it's better." So ultimately, at the end of the day, though, my point is all those ancillary businesses are going to be affected. And a lot of these people either didn't learn from last time or weren't cognizant of what happened last time. So there's a lot of people that bought new homes, that bought these big cars because their businesses were flourishing these last 2 to 4 years. And now that you turn the spigot off, let's just see how deep your pockets are. How much did you actually save? And that's
Exactly.
where this is right now is where things really are going to get interesting because on one hand, I'm a little bit surprised that pricing hasn't been adjusted, in my opinion, enough. Statistically, we're down 10%. So, I mean,
Peak,
that's a,
peak to trough.
yeah, 485 was our peak in May, and now we're down to 435. So, I mean, 10% is substantial, but that's median, right? And so we all understand the difference between mean, median, and average. But from my perspective, you know, I've been saying on your channel, on my channel, that November, December are where those opportunities are going to start arising. And I'm surprised, even though it's only the first week in November, I'm surprised that I'm not seeing more dramatic price reductions in the marketplace.
Yeah, this
And
this is where you and I disagree, right? And we've had this discussion in past interviews, and it's because of the nuance of median. I agree with you. There are going to be some massive price cuts.
yeah,
And I actually, if you go back and watch our discussions from 3 or 4 months ago, I think most of these are going to be in the 750 to 1.25
oh,
market, which is very Vegas specific. You're going to see 20, 25% haircuts, but those are going to be above the median.
right.
So when those happen in mass because they finally relent, I am waiting for the day, and it might be December, where you call me up and go, shit, Zuber, the median went up 3 grand. How the hell did that happen? I'm going to be, it's because those guys at the top finally gave up and sold out with a discount.
Anything's possible. That I think that's a very good gentleman's bet for all
Yeah,
the viewers out there.
I'll take
Here's our
it.
gentleman's. Okay, so when you give it, you got
So
to give us a time over under
so
when.
so 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 what you just reported October, right?
Yeah.
So November, December, January, or February, one of those 4 months,
Okay. All right.
there will be a positive adjustment to the
Okay.
median. We have a dollar bet, and I'm going to put
All
it right behind it.
right.
It's going to say Brian Lebo's dollar.
Yeah. Put a picture of my face on it. All right. You guys heard it.
Absolutely.
That's our
four
bet in
months.
the next 4 months. We're gonna have a median price increase. I don't see that, but hey, you
It's
know.
going to become, because again, I think I see lots of price drops. I watch Vegas. I watch you specifically
Right.
because it tells me where my market could go because you react first.
Yeah.
But I do believe we're going to see increased pain in the what I'll call luxury, for lack of a better term, because they were just overbuilt.
Right.
Too many stimulus ballers doing stupid things, and they're going to bust out. Where the low end, you still cash flow, people still live. It's I just think the median's going to surprise people and not fall as much as they want, and I think it's going to surprise to the upside one of these months. So
Yeah, I mean, there's a few things going on. I mean, obviously the $1 million question is just how much do prices fall to a point where the flag's been waved and now it's safe to come back out and purchase. I'm going to do a video explaining some of this, but really I see two things happening, and whether it takes a year, or takes 2 years, or somewhere in between, it's an and or situation between interest rates and pricing. And
Exactly.
we spoke a little bit earlier before this recording, but there is a bright side to this, and the bright side to this, at least in Las Vegas, and from what I've seen nationally, is we really don't have a tremendous amount of inventory. So as horrible as this is, and I'm going to do a video in the next week comparing this crash to 2008, because I think it's very important for people to understand why this is structured so differently and why this won't be so deep seated as 2008. The fundamentals are there. This is a normal correction for when things get overheated. But what you can't ignore is that our inventory is very, very diminished.
And that was a
So
big difference you saw the last 2 months. You now have a
huge.
plateau in inventory.
Yeah.
Again, I think that's interesting. And I don't know, I didn't hear it in your video because again, I watch your channel. Did you track cancellations or expireds?
You know what? I didn't, and right before this, I had my assistant pull it, and it was basically on par with the previous month. So it's
Which was
trending.
400% from last year.
Right, right.
Okay.
But part of that is skewed, and there's really no way, unless you go one by one, to determine how do you ascertain what was pulled off the market versus what was pulled and then relisted immediately.
Right.
So
Yeah.
even though that number is very dramatic, it also doesn't take into consideration how many properties have been withdrawn 2, 3 times and then immediately put back on to look like a fresh listing.
Right.
So there's
Okay.
that. There's one angle though that was brought up at this seminar that I thought was interesting. It's worth us talking about. It's worth us talking about. It's going to be interesting.
Right.
The missing part was, so basically one agent had a theory that things are going to get much worse because a lot of potential sellers are electing to put their homes on the market for rent because they're not willing to sell at this price.
I
So
agree.
so the only problem is, they claimed that there was 4,000 homes on the market for rent, which seemed crazy high, but I looked and it was 3,671. Now, what I
Wow.
don't know is how many were on the market this time last year. They claimed it was about 400, which if so, that's dramatic. I spoke to a couple of huge property managers. They said things aren't that bad, but they are actually being proactive and locking people into leases, giving incentives. If they sign a 2-year lease, we'll take your rent down a little bit. But they also said, look, this is the worst time of year for rental activity.
Yeah.
So it really isn't worth getting a
I
little
think
too worked up over.
this again is part of the reason why I don't see the massive price drop that most people see. Because again, what we're seeing this time versus last time, Brian, you know this, we had the discussion. The mortgage today is an asset. And for some people, it's the
Right.
best asset they own.
Right.
So I do think a lot of people are going to they're going to try to sell it at what I call wish pricing or
Right.
risk pricing minus 5%. When they don't get it and their job's in Texas now, they're
Yeah.
just going to rent it.
The conversely, the conjecture that they were making was that now you have a market flooded with rental properties, which again, it's that time of year. Let's just see how that looks in March. But they're going to be unsuccessful in those rentals, and then they're going to have to put it back on the market for sale, and that's when they're going to go ahead and give it a haircut because they're not going to succeed on the rent. I don't know that I subscribe to that theory too much.
I don't know. I mean, again, I've been doing this game for a long time. So one of the things that you have to know and you know this, mortgage rates are at 7.5, heading to 8, maybe. That's killing demand. When you want to buy a home, you don't want to rent an apartment. People are they're going to be increasing rent demand. Now, 400 to 4,000, that's hell of a jump. I have no idea if that's right, but that feels scary. But even if you have to lower rent $200, there's plenty of demand.
Right.
Um,
And that's one of the things that we've discussed in comparison to 2008 and now is look at the difference. Back in 2008, people were going into these purchases as investors with negative cash flow that was
on
very dramatic.
purpose.
Yeah, because it was speculation. These weren't investors, these were speculators. So, I mean, we know now why would you ever go into a transaction with a negative cap rate? I mean, it fundamentally makes no sense. But
Agreed.
you had so many people that were buried by by principle. That was their plan, was to have negative cash flow, that once they didn't have the equity position and they realized that their speculative bet was going to lose, just cut your losses and be out. Like we've established and we've discussed many times, yeah, if you purchased this property 7 years ago and you're making $800,000-900,000 a month positive cash flow, all right, so now you're going to make $600-700 a month. It still doesn't warrant dumping the property. Why would you? So yeah, you might make a little bit less, but it doesn't warrant changing your plan whatsoever. So I think that's where we're insulated a little bit.
Yeah, the other thing that you and I disagree on a little bit is what's the magic number where housing takes off again, or at least has a firm footing. I think I've heard you say in past videos you think the magic number is 5%. I actually think the magic number is 5.99. I think it's
For rates,
anything with, yeah, rate, sorry. Anything with a 5 on it changes the game almost overnight. That pulls in so much more demand. It at least that's what it appeared, because again we saw this in real time, right? When rates hit 7% for the first, or 6%, it stopped, then it came down, we had a great month, and then it went back over 7. So I think we we see CPI eventually roll over, we see a recession, we see the margin between the 30-year and the 10-year collapse. We somehow get to 5 3/4, and I think that happens sometime next year. Is it Q2, is it Q3, is it Q4? No idea. But the question I think you're asking is, when do we take off again? I think it's when mortgage rates get sub 6.
so I'll challenge you with a
Yeah, please.
psychological perspective on that. I'm a big purveyor of perception being reality. So
Hmm.
um, the reality could be identical in two different scenarios, but a person's perspective can change that, the way it's received.
Totally
So
agree.
my point is, yeah, right now, I think you would have to break into the fives in order to really motivate people, because right now people have a perception in their head. Like we were just at 3%, like 4.5 sounds kind of high.
Hmm.
But we have a skewed perspective on reality because those are historical lows. But that became normal for us. Now, the longer that time goes by with rates being higher, yeah, 6%, 5.875 could sound great a year from now, because
Agreed.
we became acclimated to 7% being the norm. So I think a lot of this has to do with the duration of this period of time. So yeah, right now I think you got to break through 5. A year from now, it's
Okay.
maybe 5.5%, because
Okay.
it's been so long and so many people have been effectively disenfranchised from buying because of those high rates.
I
At
think
some
that's
point,
fair.
people are going to want to jump in. I think it's a culmination between interest rates and the actual pricing of properties. I think it's possible. I think it's possible for prices to go down another 20%. I mean, I hate to say it,
So let's
but
put that in. So what'd you say? 435 is the current number?
435, yeah.
So another 20% would be 87,000 bucks.
Yeah, so I mean, if you look back,
That's 350.
if you look back at December of 2020, we were sitting at $343,000. That's where we were in December of 2020.
Okay.
So again, we're talking in general terms. I
Yeah.
think some areas are going to get crushed. Some areas just get mildly adjusted because they never really overinflated too much. But again, it's going to be a combination of price decreases and interest rates, and
Mhm.
one or the other could trigger it, or a culmination of both. But at a
Yeah.
certain point, all you investors out there, at a certain point, when the prices get low enough, your cap rates are going to make enough sense where you're like, yeah, well, I'm going to jump in now. This makes sense. And I can always refinance in a couple years when the rates get back to a more generous level. But either way, right now, I'm running cash flow and we're good. Um,
So I want
once,
I wanted I
yeah,
want another gentleman's bet. You put out a number there that just I don't agree with. So I love putting things
All right.
on wax. So you said 350 roughly. I did the math, right?
I say it's
435.
possible. I'm not saying we're going to get to 350.
Oh,
I'm saying
now we're walking backwards.
no, I'm saying it's very possible we could give back 20% more just looking at things out there. I mean, no one is
By
biting.
when? I guess the question is by when. It can't happen fast, can it? Or does it have
Over
to
the
happen
span of the
fast?
next year. I mean, I think it's, I mean, look, I mean, okay, we're talking about $100,000 decline in value, which sounds absolutely polarizing, but we've been averaging $10,000 reductions for the last 5 months.
True. Very true.
Plus, more than that, some months we've given back $15,000. The best month we only gave back four, but we're averaging at least
Okay.
10,000
You're
a
right.
month in declines. So it's not completely unreasonable to think that December of 23 we could be $100,000 less than $100,000 below. I mean, we're at
Okay.
435 to 350. I think that's very, very
350 by
reasonable.
December of 2023.
Yeah, I think it's possible. Again, look, if you look at how much we're decreasing median price,
Sure, sure.
$10,000, $15,000 a month. And again, I would be blown away if in the next 2 months we don't give up another $15,000, $20,000. I would be
Okay.
very surprised if we don't give up that in the next 2 months.
Yeah,
So
it's gonna be really weird again because the law of large numbers and the reverse is true. The law of if you we do 1,100 transactions in Vegas, you do half of those big homes. I mean, that's this is gonna get really the data is gonna get really wonky.
and I'm again, I'm looking at these every day, and there's a few places in town where I'm like, wow, yeah, okay, that actually, if I
Makes
were a
sense.
family, that makes sense to me. Like I put in the video,
Yeah,
there was one
it
neighborhood
was a
where
great idea.
one home, it was high, but it sold for $715,000 in January. Well, nothing is selling. They listed 3,000 square feet, 3-car garage, a nice backyard for a family, somewhat remodeled, and they listed it for 485. 5 people jumped. It went for $10,000 over. Another one for sale right now is at 499, and they're not selling it. So, but again, if you're a family and 3-car garage, 3,000 square feet, master plan community, that actually is a relatively good value. That makes sense. On the other end of the spectrum, there's so much crap out there that makes absolutely no sense, and I'm not seeing the price reductions to justify or motivate anyone to jump in there. But again, we've got so many delusional people that I don't know what they think are going to happen, but I've got clients where I'm like, guys, what do you think? What makes you think that in the next 6 months things are going to recover? It's only going to get worse. Like, read the tea leaves. But people are very, very stubborn, and
Yeah, they are.
it's
They're
going to
home.
happen. It's just a question of when it hits, but it's going to happen. So I do think it's very, very possible that by December of next year we could be down another 20%. It sounds crazy, but I don't
Yeah.
think it is.
Yeah, for me, it all boils down to basically I'm saying the second destruction of housing, which is the supply destruction, ends March 15th. And then the question is, where are rates? Where's the economy? How bad's unemployment? Because then we could go either way,
Right.
right? And I think there's a lot of people that have what I'll call wish pricing today. It sounds like what you're talking about. They're going to just hold through the summer or hold through the winter, sorry.
Yeah.
Then they're going to get to the spring season and then they have to decide, am I going to rent this thing or am I going to sell this thing?
Yeah.
So we'll know in March.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a lot of the people who are kicking tires, they're mostly out of the game, but there's a lot of people that are just very resilient, that they're holding steady. And I mean, at some point, this is going to come crashing down and you're going to see massive reductions, but we're not even close to where I think we should be to motivate people. And again, you got to look, even though we've gone down 10%, and even some of these neighborhoods that are dramatic, that the delta that exists because of the interest rates, you're still sitting at the same payment. And this is America. People don't care what things cost. They care what it costs them monthly. And,
Right.
again, if we drop 20% and interest rates are at 7%, it's going to feel no different to people
It's
than it did
no
in
different.
January. Right.
Exactly. No
So
different. Yeah.
we got some trouble. We got some trouble ahead. It's going to be a longer road. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you are putting out some amazing stuff on your YouTube channel. Tell them what it is. And also, a lot of people looking to shop in Vegas. And if you're a one rental at
Yeah.
a time fan, you need to reach out to Brian. How should they do all that?
Yeah, so for my YouTube channel where I do monthly update videos, I do special content when there's something that occurs in real estate that I think warrants a special video topic. So yeah, check it out. It's the Lebo Group. YouTube just changed a few things so you can have handles. So type in the Lebo Group or Lebo Knows. That's going to be the new handle at Lebo Knows, like Bo
Okay.
Knows back in the Just Do It.
I
Yeah,
like it. Yeah.
I had a T-shirt that said Lebo Knows, and it was just like the Bo Jackson one. So
Nice.
we're in the middle of a rebranding where I'm gonna split my channel into two, where we're gonna have updates if you like this kind of content, and then I also have property mansion tours where I take you through these luxury properties in Las Vegas. And what I've been trying to do is actually educate people on these tours. So I try to explain to people the difference between prefab countertops and a custom mitered edge and hand scraped flooring and a lot of construction details that most people probably wouldn't know. So it's informative and it's entertaining. So we're gonna have two channels. That's coming in 2023. But again, the Lebo Group at Lebo Knows, Brian Lebo. Just type Brian Lebo Las Vegas. All my information is there. If you want to text me directly, 702-257 Lebo, Lebo, 257 Lebo. Hit me up. I'll get right back to you.
A lot of my followers have reached out to you. They've a couple of them
Yeah.
come, great service. So again, reach out to him if you want to buy in Vegas, investment, Airbnb, whatever. He is the man. Thanks, brother.
All right. Thanks so much for your time, guys.